Okay. So I have started my animation about a giraffe in therapy. And so the idea is I've already thumbnailed it out. I don't want to show because they're a little messy. I do them quickly for myself. Um, I have a giraffe in therapy. He'll be moving his arms around and his head around. And then I want him to show all his problems. So he'll be in a fast food joint and his head is going to go through the roof. He's going to try and hide from a lion, and um, he can't hide behind a tree because he's too tall. He's going to be in a convertible and his head is just flopping about. That'll be fun to animate. And then his therapist, who is this cute little baby squirrel, is gonna go, you know what, just embrace your tallness. And the giraffe is gonna go, oh, okay, embrace my tallness. So he gets all excited and then his head goes through the wall and or the through the ceiling. And the squirrel just looks unhappy and all this dust is falling on him. So that is the plan. So let's go ahead and get started. So I've already started this. I do have my scene settings that I use for all my YouTube shorts. And I've set it to 280 to 180 with a 24 frames per second. Um, and so that's just my default. I had the therapist office already in my library. So library, and I've just been adding every time I draw something new, and I'm always drawing new things. Even if I don't need it, I pull it into my library. And it's just a simple drag and drop. You will have to select right click and select right to modify. But once you do that, then you can start adding things in here and you just drag and drop them from your layers into here and from here into back into your layers. So I've already added a giraffe. I've added my squirrel, and these are both what I call as rigs. Toon Boom probably would disagree with me, but basically I have different images on different layers, and that is mostly what how I create my rigs. I have played with some of the bones and some of the other features that Toon Boom uses. I had a really tough time. I do want to revisit that, but I find that just different drawings and different layers is an easy way to do this, and that's just kind of how I got self-taught, how I self-taught myself how to do this. Another thing too is I put all my drawings onto an all drawing instead of using the camera. I find the camera is a little counterintuitive, and doing it this way is a little bit more intuitive. And I'm sure there are benefits to doing it the other way, but this is just how I've been doing it. Um, okay, so let's get into it. So I manipulated my giraffe. As you can imagine, I don't usually have my giraffe laying down like this. Um, I'm going to take him. I want his head. I kind of want his head out of the frame. So I can do this one or two ways. I can make him bigger or I can get a little bit tighter. And where I think I want to go is a little bit tighter on this. So as I said, I have all my layers in this one. And so I'm going to go up into my advanced animation tools and I'm going to scale it. I'm going to scale it just a little bit bigger. Let's see if I can get that squirrel. Yeah, it's going to be a little tight. All right, let's make it a little smaller. Get the squirrel in there. Squirrel in there. Something else to pay attention to when you animate is the edges. So you can use this, toggle this on and off, and you can pay attention. So you can see that there is a little bit of the giraffe showing. This picture kind of, to anyone who didn't see the full picture, might be really confused on what this is. This is going a little bit on the side. So I might move it and I might move it. There we go. And I might make it just a tad bigger to get that window frame completely out of it. And sometimes it's really hard. I have definitely done animations that I have published, and then months later, I go look at it and go, what was I thinking? What is that? How is that so what was I thinking there? So it definitely does help to not do what I do and take your time with your animations and I really have been wanting to slow down with my animations and so that's the plan moving forward, except for my live ones where I'm showing you guys how to do this. So next that I've got my frame, I don't love this frame to be honest. I kind of want the scroll to be a little bit closer. So the way I did the squirrel is I did the animation tools. I'm going to make him a little bit closer and then I can move this a little bit and like, maybe I'll just do that. Or see, it's a lot of tweaking, a lot of looking. Another thing to pay attention to is the rule of thirds. And so this squirrel is taking up this third. This giraffe is mostly taking up this third. I do have an empty third, which is fine. It is balancing. Usually, when you're talking about horizontally, you really want to take up 2/3 and not a third. So that's kind of the rule of thirds. Anyways, I think this is fine. So let's get animating. I'm going to turn this off so that I can actually see what I'm doing. Okay. So I kind of want the giraffe, being a little animated and like really angry. So I'm going to animate that leg. I'm actually going to, and I want to move the focus of this, the pivotal point to where his joint would be. So think about it like I'm moving my arm. This is where it's the point is that it stays. And so I want his arm to be like that. And then I have, so the way that the layers work is that the bottom layers are behind. So as you can see, this arm right here is going to be behind the body, which is going to be, well, actually, this arm is behind the head, which is behind the body, which is behind that arm. And so that gives it a more of depth when you think of it that way. So I'm going to take this arm, I'm going to move the pivot point. So those are my two keyframes. And I want them to move pretty fast. But so I have this guy go that way and this one go that way. So they're just kind of moving back and forth. And I want to do that with the neck too. So I put one drawing layer and then I put the head and the neck together. And so when I do that, and I'm going to move the pivot point there, I'm going to keyframe it by using my timeline. And do I want it to be the same as the arms? I kind of don't. So I'm going to do it maybe one keyframe off. I'm going to have his head go forward. So now, let me do this really quick. And there is a way you can go in here and get the exact X and Y axis if you want to be very specific on your transformation. I usually copy and paste. I find that that's the easiest way for me to do it. So, and then I want to make sure that I'm staying about 2 apart. We're going to do this again for the neck, but this one is 3 apart instead. You know what? And I'm going to do one more of these. I want this to last a little bit more than a second, probably about 30 frames, maybe 35. And is what I'll usually do is I will go longer than I want to go. Just take this whole thing and do this. Okay. So I said about 35 frames. I'm going to go 40 for the time being, just see how long that is. So I'm going to put that there. I'm going to block it off because I've got a lot of stuff on the perimeter. If I don't have things on the perimeter, I'll sometimes keep it I won't even block it off. But the more that I'm doing zooming and the more that I'm doing different views and having these kinds of choices where I've got the giraffe's head off of camera, I tend to find myself doing more blocking. So let's see if this has the right effect that I'm looking for. So the arms are moving a little faster than I would like. So let me see if I take some of this and slow it down. If that is better. Because I want him to kind of, it's actually a slower motion than I was really giving him. So let's slow it down and see how it looks. Okay, that wasn't exactly what I was trying to do. Actually, I don't hate it, but I see what I did. Okay, get rid of that one. Move that there. Extend this. Yeah, okay. That's more like what I was doing. The neck is still a little fast, but I don't hate it. Um, let's see. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of that. Get rid of that. We'll get rid of this one. So he's gonna be explaining himself. And maybe I want the squirrel to do something too. So I kind of want him to nod. You see, I've got the head, the mouth, the eye, and both the eyes on the same as I have. Oh, and the ears, as the arm and the body. I want him to just have a head. So I'm going to add a drawing layer here. And we're just going to call it head. Usually I call it head all. And we'll take all of that. And I want him to nod. So I'm going to put a keyframe there. One thing that's kind of that I didn't point out when I was doing these is I almost never animate on the first frame. And one of the reasons is that it drives me nuts. But ToonBoom, say that I'm just going to pull this over here. Say that I animated that and I put it here. It now has that line and it drives me bananas. And so I almost always, because of that reason, I do a lot of copying and pasting of my keyframes. And so I will almost always do it on the second frame. Okay, so I want him to nod. So I'm going to move this so he's right there. And instead of using the rotation tool like we did with the arms, I'm going to have him nod. So I want it to be a slow nod. So we'll do about a second per down and a second per up. 20, even though 24 is technically the second, to make it easier on myself, I'll either round it to 25 or 24. I'm not very exact in my art. It's more about fast and slow. When you're working with teams and you've got a lot more specific timing and vocals that you need to match, then that's a whole different ball game. For me, just kind of having a vague idea of how fast or how slow I'm going is sufficient for my work. So it's a really slow nod, but I'm okay with it. I like it. Okay. So this is where we're going to break away. And the first thing that we're going to do, looking at my notes, is he'll be in a fast food joint. So I have a scene in my library for fast food. So I'm going to look for my fast food counter. And I want it to be either at the bottom or near the bottom. I'm going to put it at the bottom. And basically everything from 38, actually 39 on. This is where it can get a little confusing. And I'm noticing that this didn't drop into my all. So we're gonna do this. I'm gonna take all that, drop it into my all, and then I did not label my it's a bad habit of mine. I didn't label the so this is the therapist office. And that's just to keep things simple and easy. So I said 38 on. We're not going to have the therapist office. We're going to get rid of that. And I want to get rid of everything except for, oh, wait. I want to get rid of the squirrel. I want to get rid of the therapist office. And I want to get rid of all that. Okay. So now I have, and just to keep things clean, I'm going to keep the fast food stuff out of this first scene. So right now is what it should do is we should see the therapist office, the giraffe's going at it, and then it's going to basically just have the giraffe in the fast food. That's what we want it to do. So we've got this and we've got that. Okay, perfect. Thing is, because of the the fast food office in my library is quite big, and so if you go into it, it's quite big. You can barely see what's going on, and I can take that off. You can see it's a lot bigger than it is. So I'm going to put a keyframe there, and then right next to it, the very next keyframe, I am going to shrink it down. And one of the problems I'm noticing is I'm also shrinking my giraffe, which I kind of don't want to do. But the giraffe has got to change quite a bit anyway. So I'm going to keyframe. So a lot is going to have to be keyframed on him. Let's see. Let's start with the whole thing. I want him a lot bigger. So I'm going to put this somewhere where I will likely need it later. It will be a pain in the butt if I have to change that later. Something else I'm noticing too is that I'm actually going to go bigger on this. And I'm going to draw a ceiling. So I'm going to go smaller. I'm going to move that down. I'm going to go back to my fast food. This I want bigger. So I'm just going to take it and drag it with my drawing tools. That doesn't need to be animated. Pretty much rule of thumb is if you've got various drawings on a single layer, you'll want to animate it to change it. If it's all the same drawing throughout your through the lineage of all this, then you'll want to change the layer. Okay. So the giraffe, I'm going to draw a ceiling. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so I can see better. And this is going to be kind of interesting. So we look for my fast food color palette. Yellow. Clean steals a hamburger. Okay. I think that's the wall. So let's go a little bit darker. Take that same shade. I just added a new one. So I selected the shade of the wall. I clicked on a new one. That gave me the same color. And then I just dragged it down just a little bit just to give us a slightly different color. Then I'm going to take the back. And I'm going to draw a line. And I want it to go from that end to that end. And it's probably not closed all the way, but let's try. Oh, it is. Okay, cool. So now I have a ceiling, and it might not be so obvious, especially with the giraffe right there. But so I'm going to move the giraffe down. And I kind of want him out of the way because I do want to see what's going on here. And I'm going to bring him a little bit below that line. So the next thing I'm going to do is put in a mask. And the purpose of the mask is going to be where the giraffe comes through. And I'm going to, oh, you know what? I used to freehand my mask lines, and I've decided I actually prefer a straight line. So I'm going to go into my shapes and just do a line. Actually, no, I'm going to go in. I'm going to just grab a rectangle and do that. And that should be sufficient. And then I'm going to color it. So in this view, I did not make a mask. Okay. Mask drawing. I'm going to draw a square. I'm going to fill it in. And then, so I do F5 to extend it. And I usually just put a 1 in the front just to make it fast. I'll likely end up deleting parts of it. But so now I have my mask here, and it looks kind of funky. But if you turn on the light bulb and let's frame it, you can see it just blends right in. What you're not seeing is we talked about layers. So we've got the fast food layer on the backside, and then I've got my giraffe, and now I've got my mask. So if the giraffe comes between the fast food layer and the mask, it's now going to be hidden from the mask. So at this point, let me see what the giraffe looks like at the bottom. I don't like, you can see his little leg popping out here. So let's go ahead and do some editing on the giraffe. Actually, before we do that, so I'm going to give him about half a second, a little less than half a second. We'll go to 51, and I want him to go through that roof. So I want it to be pretty quick. Oh, I am animating the mask and not the giraffe. Okay, so just a few frames, and he's going to go through it, which means I can see just about everything. So his whole body pretty much has to change. So his back leg, his body. So let's take this off so I can actually see what we're doing. So that is going to have to go straight down to the floor. I might have to edit that later. This one, put it on a joint, is not only going to have to go straight down, but it's likely going to have to go somewhere over here. I'm going to have to edit that. Like I said, the body is really what's going to determine where those legs are. So I'm going to turn the body. It's going to go right about there, which means this leg needs to go here. This leg needs to go here. Actually, let's make them a little lower. A little lower. The upper body is fine, but now we've got to do the other legs. So we're going to keyframe that, keyframe that. All right, we're going to move all these around. So to give it a little bit of depth, I have one leg in front of the other. These legs are tiny, but I don't think it's going to matter. Let's see if it matters. Zoom out. We'll put the mask on. And regardless, I always go back just a little bit so I can get... Okay, I like this.